Girl Nick Raw Cannon. What's up? Long time no see. This is Philly Service Announcement Takeover Tuesday, Glockaware Radio. I'm your girl, Raw Cannon Nick. Of course, the assist, my brother Rue, is coming, but he's always doing a million and one things. And we do have a special guest here already with us today. So we normally let our special guests introduce themselves because who can better introduce you than you? So without further ado, our special guest.
Hello, thanks for having me today. I'm Amber Goltz, and I work at WAR, which is the Philadelphia Center Against Sexual Violence, and I'm the manager of anti-human trafficking there. So I work with survivors of trafficking and do all sorts of stuff at the WAR agency.
Okay, so just give a little bit of history. What does WAR stand for?
Yeah, so originally WAR stood for Women Organized Against Rape, but now it's officially the Philadelphia Center Against Sexual Violence. We kept the acronym but changed the name.
Okay, so this I'm so happy to have you here because this is definitely a major issue that a lot of people aren't really aware of. Personally, I've had seen and heard things of young teens being trafficked, and I have a friend who had worked in that area as well. So it definitely is a population that has a unique set of concerns that need to be addressed. And so, where is War located at?
Yeah, it's located on 16th and JFK, 1617 JFK, and it's in the Penn 1 building above Suburban Station, and we're on the 8th floor, Suite 800.
So, how would one come to be a part of this organization or get services? Do you take referrals? Do you take walk ins? And I imagine there must be some sort of, um, secrecy involved, confidentiality involved with it. So generally, do you work with other agencies to get referrals? Do people contact you? How is the main way someone can get in contact you for resources?
Yeah, it's a little bit a mix of all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So we do offer walk-in time. So we're at the office on 16th and JFK from 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. And so people can walk in and if they need to and get services that way to just be able to talk to like a counselor or a therapist who's available just right off the bat to get signed up for services. Also, the easiest way is to just call our hotline. So if you're interested in signing up for any of our services, whether it's therapy, counseling, group work, and all of our services are free and you don't need health insurance either. So you can call our hotline and say you're interested in one of our services and then kind of go from there. There's currently a wait list for therapy, but it's not too long. So hopefully that would go quickly. And then just for you all to know, our hotline is 215-985-3333. And then we also do get referrals. So like I work a lot with a lot of like anti-trafficking agencies in the city, so like Salvation Army, for example, or like the Philadelphia Children's Alliance, places like that, that will refer survivors of trafficking directly to me, and then I can start that process for them as well.
Okay. Okay. Now, I know you mentioned some of your services when you were kind of giving the plug. And given that hotline number, could you repeat that hotline number again for everybody that's watching?
Yeah, 215-985-3333. And it's 24/7 and it's confidential too, so you don't have to like say who you are when you're calling. And it's also always staffed by a trained sexual assault counselor.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, our brother Rue has
Yes, I'm
joined
in
the
the building.
stage.
I don't hear myself.
Brother
Come
Rue.
on.
We can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear
okay.
you.
The queen is in the house, y'all.
Yes. Yes.
Nick, Raw
Yes.
Cannon. Shout out to the Cannons. That's one of my new joints now. You know I shout out the Cannons every week, man.
I see that. I see that. When I'm not here, I see it.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yo,
absolutely.
it feels good. I know she came into something. It's always like a reunion when my sis come because she lives such a full life. So, I
Just
went
like
from
you.
having her every Tuesday to knowing she's coming but not knowing if she's coming. You know what I'm
Just to be
saying?
a surprise.
So, and that's a good thing. I appreciate that. I don't want to go away from the conversation, but you know, I had to put that in there.
Of course he did.
My right hand sister in the building. You know what I'm saying?
Well, before my brother Rue gets into any questions that he may have, you had mentioned some of the services when you were identifying how they can make a referral or request. What, if you could just identify briefly what the services are and what the services provide to individuals that get referred or walk in for service?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, we have the free counseling or individual therapy work. And counseling is more like case management type stuff, working with them till they get signed up to be with a therapist. And then in the therapy work, it'll range from however many sessions that person needs. But we usually are with them for quite a bit of time, and we do like more of the trauma processing work during the therapy. And again, it's for anyone who's experienced any sort of sexual violence, sexual assault, or trafficking. And it's also ages 2 and up, and then any gender and free, like I mentioned before. And then we also do medical accompaniment. So if you're familiar with PSARC, it's the Philadelphia Sexual Assault Response Center. And that's on 300 East Huntington Park Avenue. And anyone can walk into that at any time too. We always have a advocate there. So in that building is kind of houses SVU. We have a little office in there. I think PCA has an office in there. And then there's also a trained nurse who can do rape kits. So if someone has experienced a sexual assault, they can go directly there and be able to do a rape kit, have an advocate, and also report or talk to a detective if they want to. Or they can just do one of the things. They can remain anonymous. They don't have to. They can just talk to an advocate, whatever they feel comfortable with. But it's kind of cool to be able to have it all in one spot so that they don't have to keep telling their story over and over and over again, because that's something that is a struggle sometimes. And then we also offer court accompaniment. So anyone who's going through court proceedings because of their sexual assault that happened, we do it with youth and adults. We can have an advocate there with them through the whole entire process, helping them with their victim witness statements or just being there for support. And then we also have our education and outreach team who does do prevention education at schools, talking about like consent and safe touch with kids. And then we also do like tabling events, stuff like that, and then trainings too. Like I mentioned that I do a lot of human trafficking trainings for, like I just finished training all of the staff at the Juvenile Detention Center about the signs of youth who may be being trafficked or grooming signs, things like that.
So, did you already said with the brick and mortars that y'all have, like the locations and stuff like that?
Our main one is the one on 16th and JFK. That's the one above Suburban Station in the Penn 1 building. And then we have that little office at PSARC. Other than that, just hotline.
Do y'all have any like I guess you would say like satellite places like in hospitals or anything like that?
We don't. Just I guess that little office that we have at PSARC. And then I may or may not be being able to also have a little bit of office hours at the Juvenile Detention Center as well, because I'm there on Wednesday afternoons doing groups with the youth.
Right.
So that also may be like an option for people to be able to talk to me.
Do y'all have any? I'm asking these questions because I'm familiar with you guys. I would hope that everybody would be familiar with WARG. It's very important. Because I did want to ask like some statistics. Do you know any statistics? I might. No, just like I really be wanting people, because we talk about like gun violence a lot. You know, not on this show in particular, but we talk about gun violence a lot, and rape is a very real thing. Sexual abuse. Sexual assault is an extremely real thing. It's very, very prevalent, disturbingly prevalent.
And so is sex trafficking.
Exactly. So I was only going to ask statistics, not like to put you on the spot or anything, but so we can have like clear understandings of things, not like creating a boogeyman about it, but people can really know what's prevalent. Like you're moving around in spaces and thinking you only have to be protected by cars running you over. You know what I'm saying? If we drive aggressively, car accidents are high. You know, people, that likelihood of somebody being in a car accident or something like that is very real. But because we don't necessarily talk about it like that, people don't know how dangerous cars are. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Right.
But it's something that we need to pay attention to, because us not paying attention to it is one of the reasons why it's so dangerous, you know? So I know that what people would call rape culture is very prevalent.
It is.
And we don't talk about it enough. And when you start talking about consent and how people communicate with each other and deal with each other, again, we not talking about it enough for it to be. And that's the only reason I was asking about statistics part, where like what are the rape statistics in Philadelphia? You know what I'm saying? What is the sexual assault statistic? So people can understand that this is a real serious thing that's moving, is active. We know about it. It's called rape culture.
It
Something
is.
that can be called a culture, you know, and it's real. We're not making that up. That's not some fly term. Just, you know what I mean? For the time, it's a real thing. People really think in that way.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we need to address that. So that's what I was asking statistics about. And then what I was asking about the locations or satellites is because it's like I had a situation at the center, and we sent a young lady to Einstein. And I'm like, I'm already on Broad in York.
Yeah.
But I don't have the means to deal with, you know, what's going on in at the center. We don't, that's not what we do, you know?
Right.
And the question that kept coming to me is like, I know that you guys exist, but it's far away from where I'm at when I'm doing, you know, anybody else. So that's why I was asking about like, is it possible? I was going to ask a question. Is it possible? Do y'all have more to create like satellites for like satellite offices or places where it's like, that can be somewhere you could take somebody, and you know we definitely gonna have folks coming to that. You know what I'm saying? I don't. You know what I mean? It's like because it's like where you meet somebody at, and they tell you something, and it's like, all right, I'm like, all right, this. Do I want to call the cops? I know I'm supposed to call the cops, but then they might not want to deal with the cops because
might,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
and it's like,
sometimes
do I send it to like? It's like you're entrusting this with me, and I'm like, where's the closest place?
Yeah.
Right.
You know, that I outside of just a phone call, and I made a phone when it happened. I made a phone call to a brother. I don't know if I don't think he's working with War anymore. Tyrone Melvin.
I met him right before he left.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and he was on the show before, but that's the reason why I was asking you those questions. Like, do y'all have it? And then the next question would be, do y'all think about having like satellite places where it's 1 or 2, maybe 3 people, and they have like. Maybe not be a nurse, but they understand like all the different things you could be trained for about consent. You know, they got the whole toolkit, but they might not be a nurse.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Or maybe even have like, I know there's the hotline, but is there a way that do you have like an outreach or a street team that can meet somebody where they're at? Like, is that even possible? Because I know in certain situations, just having someone who is knowledgeable and you know, trained in trauma informed care to meet with someone even before they even like go to, because sometimes that process alone can be degrading and dehumanizing, and having someone there to support you and during that process to kind of, you know, guide you through it and just kind of ground you in understanding the process and giving it more, I want to say more like empathy and connection to the person in the situation, instead of like, oh, this is the process. You know what I mean? Because you can lose the individual in the process because of the things that need to be done.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we've definitely talked about having other satellite locations, and I've been interested in opening like a drop-in center, which I think would be awesome.
Yeah.
Especially geared towards like youth in the city.
We got a drop-in center. I'm the director of a drop-in center.
Nice.
That's why I think that's why the young lady came to
Yeah.
the center. You know, and it's just like it's not like being fearful of the situation, but I just want to make sure I'm handling the situation properly, especially as a man, a black man. I need to know, like, how do you handle it? And I called another black man who was aware and told me what I should do. But I was just thinking, like, could it have been something closer to
or
where
maybe
we were at?
or maybe I mean, she mentioned that she comes out and does trainings. Maybe she can do training at the
Yes,
drop-in center.
we are
That would
always
be-
looking for trainings.
That would
down
be
the-
an awesome
down the drop-in
opportunity
center.
for just people who work, you know, with the community
Yes, we
to
need
come
all the
in
tools.
and be able to support somebody
I need all the tools.
who is dealing with that.
So how much has because trafficking in many forms has like gone on longer than we think. You know what I mean? Longer than what we know.
Yeah.
But I know like hearing the word trafficking like changes everything. Like how, if you could say like the work you do, how has it changed since trafficking has gotten attached to it?
That's a good question. Um, I think, well, I've been working in anti-trafficking for like 6 or 7 years now.
Okay.
And so when I came on to work in like the sexual assault arena, I was already doing trafficking stuff.
Okay.
But I think
Oh,
there's,
so you are
yeah,
so you are the trafficking work being attached to.
yes, yes, they brought me on. Yes, exactly.
So
I'm the
you
one that
are
was
the
attached.
trafficking work that's being attached. Okay, okay.
But I can say I think one of the big things is like all of the myths and misconceptions that there still is about trafficking,
Right.
and like so many people thinking that trafficking only happens in other countries, or people are being brought here from other countries and things like that. When you can be trafficked out of your house, like you don't
Right.
even have to move at all,
Mhm.
and it happens in every state, every city, every every
That's
town.
If we could take this opportunity to turn this into an because we are a resource show,
yes,
right?
yes we are.
We share resources with our community. If we could take this opportunity to share some of the things that you discuss when you do your training so that people can understand, like, what does it mean to be groomed? What does that look like, right? What are some red flags that people can look for when dealing with people who may have some signs but they're not really sure what's going on? What would you, say to someone who really don't have any training in trafficking or dealing with rape culture? Just a few pointers, not like a full blown out,
Yeah.
training session, but we have people watching in the community who may know somebody that this is happening to and probably don't know how to go about having a conversation with them, getting them help. Well, they know now, they got the number. Can you repeat the number again? Because we're
Yeah.
going to say this number multiple times during the show today.
Yeah, it's 215-985-3333.
That's the hotline. It is 24 hours a day, and there is always someone, a trained professional on the other end of the line that is trained in this area. Like you're going to get someone on the other end of the phone who is going to be able to support you and guide you into where you need to go or what you need.
Yep.
Okay.
I do want to ask this as a part of like the point is because you said grooming. I do want to know like what is the like legal definition of trafficking?
Yeah.
Because you saying you don't have to go out of the country.
Yeah.
It is not bringing somebody necessarily into the country. You don't have to move out of the space that you in. So now we talking about definitions.
Yeah.
Because when you say traffic, you think moving from one place to the next. So please give us like a clearer definition of trafficking. And then like she said about grooming, I would like to hear a couple things about consent. You know what I mean? Just like she said, like this, I'm very interested in like
Yeah.
training, especially people who do the training.
Right. So the biggest part about the definition of trafficking that's most important to know is that there's 3 elements that really need to be present in order for it to be considered trafficking, and that's force, fraud, and coercion. So if somebody's being forced to do something that they don't want to do, and that can look like physical force, it can look like sexual assault, it can look like threats. Like if you don't do this, I'm going to go hurt your family, I'm going to hurt your pet or your kid. And then fraud can look like false promises. So especially like with youth, it can look like false promises of like a better home, like I can give you these things that you aren't getting at home or you aren't getting in foster care, or things like that, and being able to offer them that as a starting like of the grooming process. It can also look like false promises of a relationship. So somebody might be in a relationship with their trafficker and promise them that we're going to be together and I'm going to give you a better life. and then it goes sideways, and then it could look like false promises of a job too. Like you think you're getting hired to do one thing, and then you get there and something completely different, or you think you're going to be getting paid a certain amount and you're not getting paid it, things like that. And then coercion is really like the psychological manipulation. That can also look like threats. It can look like threatening to like call ICE. It can look like threatening to call social services. It can, and then also kind of like gaslighting, victim blaming, blaming the situation on them, or like making light of it and making them feel like it's not really a big deal what's happening. So really like that psychological piece comes into play there. And then it's the same for labor trafficking. Those three components need to be present. But for sex trafficking, if you're under the age of 18, then you don't have to prove force, fraud, or coercion was present in like court, for example. It's automatically considered child exploitation. And then if you're older than 18, you do have to prove force, fraud, or coercion. And then for labor trafficking, you have to prove it no matter how old you are, and that's just because the legal age to work is different in every state.
So what does like you said grooming? Like what does grooming
What are
look
some
like?
signs of that?
Yeah.
Like, how can someone identify if they are being groomed or
Yeah.
not?
So I think especially when talking about minors, it's really when an adult, so someone who's, it doesn't have to be like a big age range, but someone who's older, like really taking notice in a one specific kid, and giving them a lot of attention, how it could start. So it could be like an example, it could be like a sports coach could be like starting to offer one player rides home from school when they're getting them into situations where they're one-on-one, like offering them more that one-on-one time, or kind of like giving them gifts or praise or things like that, and really singling out that one kid. And then also it could be like even starting to kind of gain rapport with that kid, and also maybe even that kid's family, so that now the family is comfortable enough to leave them alone with
Right.
that specific adult. And so
Y'all hear
then,
that? The family. That mean they go out and they befriend the kids' parents and make the parents comfortable enough to leave their child with them.
yeah, there's like lots of instances where like the coach might be invited to dinner, things like that. And then, yeah, that's just like the process of when they're being alone together, kind of creating that relationship and that rapport, and then slowly starting to be more exploitative, and maybe, asking them for pictures of themselves or things like that. And then that's just how it slowly gets more and more and more to the point of exploitation. I think also a good example that I always use with a lot of the kids I work with is R. Kelly, because they're always familiar with that reference, is that he did a really good job at grooming. He got that rapport with the kids, and especially the families. They came in and even did like sit downs with him to say, I'm going to help your kid with their career. And then it got to the point where they were okay with leaving their kids with them, and then it turned into that whole, yeah.
So the consent, like people have a lot of questions around consent, but like how do you train that, like with legal definitions of consent, and then is it any cultural definitions of consent, whereas like you talk to different people from different ethnicities and it's like, no, that's understood as this, when does that, when you talk about consent, not that it ever should be a question of consent, but it's just like people they accept different social norms. You know what I'm saying?
And yeah, and that's the thing we all have to understand is their social construct and legal definition.
Right.
Sometimes it get things all screwed up.
Right.
Because socially, we as a people tend to come up with all these different ways that we in our minds consider to be consent. Like we come up with these nicknames for private parts, right? And don't understand the danger in that when we're doing it. So it's like the legal definition is the legal definition no matter what culture you are from.
Right.
So it's it's kind of hard, but I would definitely like to hear what you say the legal definition is.
Yeah, so Well, when talking about like the different body parts and stuff, that's something we definitely cover in like the safe touch when talking with
Oh, really?
like little kids in elementary school. We do that.
Yes.
Like we take up puppets and have like a whole thing with them.
Wow.
I don't do that one personally, but all of our education does.
Mm-hmm.
Education team does that.
Okay.
And then when I do my consent stuff, I'm specifically talking usually with the groups for the at-risk youth.
Mm-hmm.
So we have like a whole session. We talk about it. We do talk about just like the age of consent in Pennsylvania, which is 16.
Legal age of consent in Pennsylvania is 16.
Yeah.
16.
And then we talk about like how much older somebody can be than you for that to still be legal. So it's that 4 years age range.
So if a person is 16, what's the oldest someone can be within that range? So what, that 20?
Yeah.
And that person will still be considered within law.
Yes. But if it's 15 and they're 20, then no.
Okay.
Yeah. But 16 and 20 is still a really big difference.
Your frontal lobe.
It is.
We could turn the
16 to 20
conversation
is
into
a
the
real
frontal
big
lobe.
difference, because when you think legally, like a 16-year-old and a 20-year-old, me being past both ages, know clearly they both still got a lot of growing to do. But between a 16-year-old and a 20-year-old, there's still a lot of lived life, or could be a lot of lived life experience that makes, that age gap,
Yes.
come on, like
That-
16 to 20.
Right.
Oh, wow.
And then we also kind of just like read some stories about what consent looks like. One thing that the youth always kind of struggle with is like when alcohol and substances get involved, and like how to know when someone isn't giving consent, what consent looks like when you're both like intoxicated. So that's a big conversation that we also talk about.
So what does consent look like if you're both intoxicated?
That's a good question. I think first and foremost, like always is like getting that enthusiastic yes to like consent in something is like a good flag to like kind of like base it off of.
Okay.
And I always just tell them if it just if someone isn't enthusiastic about it, then just don't do it. Just wait when you're sober.
No,
Yeah. No, I agree.
Now, how much? Because two things that disturb me, and the reason why I talk about like rape culture, and I look at it like an overall thing, where college campuses and military bases and stuff is like the most unsafe places when you talk about, especially women, but just sexual assault overall. And it's like, this is the institution that's supposed to protect, and then you got the other institution where you're supposed to get educated. And like, when you do this type of work and then add trafficking to that, when you do this type of work, like when you look at those things, like what's your thought on that? Like, I'm just curious of that. Like outside, just personally, you know what I'm saying? I don't normally ask personal questions, but I think this is kind of related because it's the work that you do. But just personally, how do you, like, the place where that's supposed to protect an idea, and then the places when we're supposed to have our highest levels of thought and idea, this is where it's the worst. Like, can you speak, like, any way that you can speak to that? It's like it's an open-ended question just because you do this work.
Yeah. Well, it definitely makes me angry, and it can be really frustrating. And I think some days it's definitely harder than others, and some days it just feels like this huge feat that it's like never gonna go away, because I don't think it is, unfortunately, ever gonna go away. So I guess it's kind of like some days it just feels like really heavy and like a lot, and like I don't know how one person can make a difference. But then I try to like remind myself, even if I help one person, that's enough. And I think it's also really difficult that the systems that we do have set up aren't helpful a lot of the time.
Right.
Like if there is an emergency and we think that the best option to do is call 911, I'm always hesitant to, because I don't want to get law enforcement involved, and they don't really want to either.
Right.
So another thing that's supposed to protect us is something that's not.
It's not.
Yeah.
I agree. And for me, I feel that just I think, right, it starts with education, right? And I feel like just given a presence within these institutions, going out to places, educating people, because when you are young, you are seeing this as this, you know, leap of independence. You're stepping out. You're trying to find out who you are. You're trying to find your place in the world and your place within your family. And sometimes it looks like sexual independence. I'm out here, I'm making my decisions. And when you're young and easily able to be coerced, it can look like, you know, this is a part of life, like this is what it is. And that's really not the case. So I think that just putting that presence out there for people to know what these things are, saying these words so people can hear it,
Right.
rape culture, sex trafficking, grooming. Like grooming is something that can be done across the board in different areas.
Right.
You know what I mean? You thinking about sexual harassment in the workplace. Like grooming can look like, oh, you got a nice shirt on today. Oh, your shirt is pretty. And then the next thing, oh, your outfit. And then the next thing, oh, your hair and where you going. And you know what I mean? But see, the crazy part is, as someone who was a young girl before, those things are flattering. When you're a young girl coming up, this is what a gentleman's supposed to do to holla, right? This is how he get in and build a rapport
Right.
and get a relationship and get to know you. It's called hollering at you. You know what I'm saying?
It's still courting.
It can be, but
Right.
it's also can be dangerous.
Right.
And it's just, it's hard for you to know and understand that. But I feel like if we as a community are just making a presence with these terminologies, with this culture, sharing, educating, and making sure that someone is available for young men and women, because it's not just women,
No.
it's young men too. Young men and women to be able to have a safe space, because that's important. Having a safe space is like literally the first step to being able to open up and recognize that this is happening to me. Because I mean, I'm sure you probably like deal with that a lot with a lot of people who may be apprehensive, unsure, like they may reach out and never follow through.
Yeah.
So how does your organization follow up with people like that, or stay in contact with people like that
Aftercare.
who really want to get the help that they need but do not know how about going and doing it?
Yeah.
So do y'all have like people who do follow up and outreach within boundaries of because there's that confidentiality piece that you have to keep when working with the population, because it can be, if the wrong person finds out that they're even trying to get help, it could be life threatening.
Right.
So how do you go about providing services and getting people help within the boundaries of confidentiality so that you're not putting people's lives in jeopardy?
Yeah. So the first part, me personally, I believe like all the clients and survivors that I work with, I am kind of like doing that case management piece until they don't want it. So it can be like 5 years from now and I'm still talking to them.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Like I have a survivor that I've worked with now for probably like 3 years, and she'll, just call to like check in. And like, I think, having worked with this type of population and people that have experienced this extreme trauma, especially for victims of trafficking, is that having that consistency is really helpful in their lives, and having just one person that they can turn to and talk to and get help from is also really a big part of it. And like I said, staying consistent and just showing up for them consistently is a huge help, and just being able to be there to talk to them. So even if they're done done with the whole program and I haven't heard from them for a month and they start calling again, like definitely we'll talk to them, pick up the phone, even if it's just like I said, to have a conversation, just chat with them. I think that's really important to not just cut them off. It's like, you're done with therapy.
Right.
Never see you again. So
Right.
I try to keep the process going for really as long as they need it.
So my fault. So when somebody comes, it's like a whole process to it. Like, y'all, it's not just, okay, you come, we make sure you okay, we check you, medical check, get the cops involved, get an investigation, and then y'all go from there, other steps. So like, what does the process look like? Like,
Yeah.
if I brought somebody down there, they told me, they told y'all they were sexually assaulted, and they 16, 17, 18. So once I do that, then what happens?
Yeah.
Kind of like, what's the next step?
So there could be different routes to go. So first off, if there's a minor that comes in and says something, we obviously have to do a mandated report, because we're all mandated reporters. So that would be the first step. And then kind of figuring out what they wanted. So if they wanted to go to PSARC and get a rape exam, they could. If they don't have to. If they want to report it, they can, and we can go with them. If they don't want to do any of that and they just want to do services, and they can just start to get signed up for therapy with us, and that can be another route. And then based on those routes, it'll like continue. Like if they wanted to report and then they needed a court accompaniment, and then maybe start therapy. So there can be a bunch of different routes, or someone just needs like check-in calls every once in a while, isn't sure what they want. Then we can do like check-in calls with them weekly, and then maybe after a month or so they're wanting to get involved in counseling or do group counseling, because maybe that's a little less intimidating to be in a group than it is to be one-on-one. So there's a bunch of different routes people can go.
So what's what is some of preventative measures that y'all like try to teach, that y'all teach to the clients, that of course y'all are trained on it, and y'all like to get out there to the public, like not so much like a slogan, but like just like points that you got, that if you do this it'll curb that, if you do this it'll curb that. So can you have like some preventative measures to like that you believe in, or that y'all actually practice, or need to be done policy, or however you see prevention?
Right.
That's what I would like to know. Like,
so I think definitely, like I was mentioning, that Safe Touch program we do. So that's just teaching kids at an early age what consent looks like, and how to, what healthy adult relationships look like, things like that from a young age, so that can hopefully prevent something happening in the future. And then just another example, like the groups that I do at the detention center is an anti-trafficking like prevention workshop. So it's geared towards at-risk youth 12 to 18. So the idea is that they haven't been involved in trafficking yet. Maybe it's like there's some red flags like starting to pop up. But this is like really geared towards, how do you recognize the grooming signs? How do you recognize the red flags of a trafficker, what they look like? We even talk about like online stuff, like how you talk with people online, things like that, and also like healthy relationships, so that if they're like recognizing red flags in a relationship that they might be in, to like help them. So that's kind of what we do for the prevention stuff for trafficking stuff, and then also just like all the trainings, I'd say too, because like hopefully if a law enforcement person is trained in trafficking and they go in and like, I don't know, something's happening, but they recognize this could be a red flag for trafficking. Maybe the person isn't yet being victimized in trafficking. They could recognize that red flag for them and then get them help.
I wanted to ask, do you have a path if someone comes to your agency, but they are fleeing? Do you have a path to safe housing or safe haven, or somewhere that they can go and be safe and still benefit from your services? I mean, I know, and if that exists, those locations and stuff like that would be private and not able to be shared. But does your agency have something like that in place?
Yeah, we don't specifically have like a shelter or anything like that, but we do work with a lot of people, other agencies that do.
Okay.
Like domestic violence agencies, and also some like trafficking agencies too. And some of those places do set aside beds specific to war. So if somebody like needs to get out right now, that hopefully that bed would be available.
Okay. So even if you are in a situation where seeking or recognizing any kind of rape cultural, sex trafficking, grooming situation, you can go to this agency. And if you feel that by going to this agency is going to cause issues or problems at home or wherever you are, then some connections can be made to get you into a safe space while you work on getting the services from the program.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what does you guys, first of all, are y'all hiring? Are y'all hiring?
we are.
So can you give?
Yes, they are hiring.
Can you give us like
Yes.
some of the positions that you're hiring for? Do y'all have? Is it anything that's like racially specific? Is it anything that's ethnically specific as far as hiring and the demographics you're working with? Philadelphia being 48% black, you know what I'm saying? Being culturally competent. So like I was saying about, I definitely don't have a question of the legal versus the cultural part of a thing when you're talking about consent. It's a very personal, real thing you can understand. There's no confusion with me with that, but that is something that's real where people be like, oh, that's not culturally, we do this, and it's not a problem, and it might be a problem in your culture being looked at, but that's what y'all do.
But
So
that's right.
but is it any is it any spaces for that, like like I said, racially and culturally specific hiring around the demographics that y'all work with, and just hiring overall? Like, just let me know what, if you can answer both of those.
Yeah. So first, some of the positions we're hiring for are crisis advocates, and so those are the people that usually staff the hotline during the work hours 9 to 5, and then they also are at PSARC doing the medical accompaniment. And then they also do like check-in calls and things like that. And then we're also hiring for a human trafficking advocate / court advocate. Because right now it's just me who does all the trafficking stuff, so it's a lot. So it'll be nice to have somebody helping me.
Support.
Right.
Yeah, and then I'm pretty sure on the education side they're also hiring some educators as well.
So all do any of these have like specific skill sets that people have to come in with? Like, all right, if I'm coming in work with you for trafficking, do y'all just train up the skill set, or do I have to come with a certain skill set to even qualify for trafficking?
Right. For this position, since it's an advocate, it's usually pretty entry level. So all that stuff can pretty much be taught.
Trained in.
Yeah.
All right. So that's important for everybody, because I know when you hear something as serious as, sexual assault, rape, things like that, you thinking like, all right, if you're working in a nonprofit with this, we need to have some psychology and all that for all the different places. But I've learned from working in the nonprofit sector, like, there's a lot of really, really good certifications and stuff where you didn't necessarily have to go to school,
You can
but
get trained
you can get trained for it, rather on the job if they do that, or just going to somewhere and getting trained for it, and then it makes you. So that's why I asked that, and then you covered all three when you said the crisis advocate. Y'all looking for somebody to work with you as an assistant for
trafficking advocate,
trafficking advocate, crisis advocate, and what was the other
and
one?
then education.
Education to be like training those different things like trauma and stuff like that, right? All right.
Okay.
So I wanted to be clear what the training was.
We have a question.
Oh.
I wonder if in that hiring process, do people have to have educational credentials, or is there a preference to valuing folks with lived experiences as the professionals?
So I can answer it because we just said what you asking on the screen. If you would listen to, it's like, nah, I'll just mess
Don't
with you.
be like that.
But I think I know that person, and she know why I'm acting like nah.
Listen, no.
But she did just say that most of them are entry level, and they will basically train you up. She's the main. Are you the main trainer, or do they have other people?
For trafficking, I'm the main.
For trafficking, she's the main trainer, and she definitely wants trafficking advocates right now. She is the trainer and the advocate. She's, you're a one-stop shop for trafficking at war. So she needs people that she can train up to help her. And I think that's something we really need to get into. And I know folks I don't know that, but I know y'all know each other. But yes, you can be trained up, and we definitely gonna jump into our folks and start asking them, because this is really, really important. But just like you said, like understanding the language around it, understanding like really what trafficking having a language now. Certain words that's being said, and then that's why I really asked that definition about what is trafficking, because it's for me, it's kind of like it's not new, but it's new. And then what is it? Because when you think of trafficking, you thought of drugs.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that was drug trafficking, okay. And then it's like human trafficking is like, all right, yeah, I don't know, but okay. But then it's like, yo, this is a real thing. So now it has its own language that we need to know. So I do want to ask him, why do you do this? Like, how did you get into this? Why do you do this?
Yeah. Before I forget, I did want to just mention that we do welcome people who live experiences, and definitely would love to have people working with us who are lived experience. So that's definitely a credential that we look for. And then why did I get into it?
Yes.
I started my professional work working with at-risk youth in elementary schools. And that's kind of how I started to get involved in social work kind of aspect stuff, working with them. And then I moved on to work with same thing, at-risk youth, but kind of going into homes and working with the families. It was families who may be on the verge of losing custody. So I would go in and work with them and their families, make sure it was a safe space, to try to make sure that they would have the opportunity to stay home if that's the best option. And then I worked on a 24/7 human trafficking hotline in Colorado. That's where I'm originally from. So that's kind of working in those fields. I slowly started learning about trafficking, and then working on the hotline, obviously. And then I got my master's in human rights practice. So kind of just it all, once I started working on the hotline, definitely I was this is what I want to do. I just got really passionate about it. And so yeah, it kind of took off from there.
So what does partnerships with WAR look like with other nonprofits and stuff like that? Is it, again, like I said, like the satellite thing? I'm kind of throwing that out there because I think that would be dope for the center to have something like that. But do y'all just do events? Do y'all come out and do workshops? Do y'all do trainings for organizations and stuff like that? What does partnerships look like with other nonprofit organizations, or just organizations, period, if they want the skill sets that y'all provide and the help?
Yeah, so really any of those things. Definitely can provide any sort of training to any organization. And with other nonprofits who are doing similar work, definitely do lots of referrals to each other, lots of collaboration. There's lots of task force meetings that we're all on together. One geared towards minor survivors of trafficking. There's policy ones that we do, where all the people in the city and then even outside of the city come together to talk about it and kind of work together. And then we do lots of trainings together. I do lots of trainings with some of the other organizations. If they have an event, we might go out and do a tabling thing at their events, things like that.
So we had another question up there. What type of preventative work does your organization do? And I think you did kind of cover some of that as well, explaining about the trainings and stuff, going into the schools, going into the prisons, working with, I think you said at-risk youth between the age, what was the age
16
again?
to 18, right?
12 to 18.
12 to 18.
Yeah.
12 to 18, just kind of educating them and, just
to consent,
giving them, some tools to understand if these things are happening, or to be able to identify when these things are happening. But I do think that's a good question with what type of preventative work does your organization do? Because I think if an organization or agency wanted to get some sort of training, how would that look? What is the process for that?
Do they
what
have
would
to
they
pay?
need to do?
Is it free?
To get
stuff like that.
Get the people in their organization trained on, sex trafficking and, the language of grooming and things of that nature.
Yeah. So all of our trainings are free. And
That's a good
usually-
point.
Yeah.
Free. They are free.
Yes.
You will be getting trained at the center.
Free.
Yes. We're going to have a training at the center.
Yes, we are.
Y'all heard them.
And then they also can call our hotline and just say they're interested in it, which is 215-985-3333. And then also you can reach out to me directly. My email is just Amber, AMBER @WOAR.org.
Do y'all have a like a trainer system with y'all training?
We don't, but that's a good idea.
Yeah, like we need to work on that because
Yeah.
I would love for it. Like
He
one of the
big
things
on that.
yes.
He
Yeah.
big on that. He
Because
love
I would
getting
like
trained to be
yeah,
able to train.
exactly.
So he can
That's
train
what I
and
need.
then
So I
that-
could train.
We, you know, like
Because
pay
that's
it
what we
forward
want to
kinda
do with the
thing.
center. Like we do restorative justice through RCI. So we're a restorative justice hub, and that fits right into that because you're taking something away from a person that is going to has to be restored. You know, and however processes that we have to restore as much as we can. But we're going to make the center a training center where you will come and get trained in RCI. You can come and get trained in trauma. You can come and get trained in cultural competency. I can't even get it out.
Competency.
Cultural competency. You know what I'm saying? And then we want to just keep at. We're about to be trained to be able to be a part in Hub and show people how to fill out their part. And to shout out to Paul. You know, my man Shujin. He gonna come up here. He got a documentary that he gonna be doing, and we're gonna show a screening. I'm letting everybody. We're gonna show a screening at the center. So, but we want to just be able to have the people, all of our people at the center, fully trained staff, people that's just coming in, but also be able to train people to go out and be able to do this and have those satellites kind of just created based off the training. You know what I'm saying? If war, you know, in the budget or how they do the organization, it's kind of like we can't actually have a war room in y'all space. You should use that. You can't have the war room in y'all space, but we can do the train, which y'all probably already on that. Do the trainings, but that trainer piece would take it even further for people to have that information, and it's free. That's dope. But you'll be doing the training, right?
Yes.
Okay, because you said you're the only one to do the sex
Yes.
trafficking. All right, cool. So
Yes.
I'm definitely going to talk. I'm only asking that question because she'll be the one coming to the center.
Yeah.
That's what I want to make sure that I'm knowing. Like, okay, I already have your information and everything. I can reach out to you and ask you when and how we can set that up. But this is something that is on my mind, like about when you were saying stop giving, you know, private parts, you know, different names and all of that stuff. Like, how important to this whole process is sex ed?
Yeah, super important. That's something I actually also teach a class at Temple on human trafficking. So if anyone's a Temple student and wants to take my class, they can.
Oh, good.
Okay.
But we actually spent a whole period talking about sex education and what that looks like. And I think that's a huge part of it because sex ed either doesn't exist at all in some schools or what they're getting isn't by like a trained person from like their biology teacher. That's
Right.
like, yeah, what are they going to help with?
Right.
I remember for me, it was like literally my biology teacher, we just put questions into a box and he had to answer them. And that was my education for that.
Because I think that's really important in how I don't want to say how we project or you know, and I'm talking about on both ends of it, but just people not having an education on how their body work and what are the feelings, what are the urges, and you know what like that's so important. Like just knowing my body works. Like even what you were saying about being a young woman, and it's like that's a biological thing that makes that it's a connection to, like, you know what I mean, what you're going through at that time in your life, and chemicals being unbalanced, and then your frontal lobe not being fully developed, and here come this guy, and he like, oh, your smile is so cute, and you like, what?
Yeah.
Who are you? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Shoot, not just as a young girl, grown women, and be like, oh,
but that's one of the
thank
things.
you.
And then you saying grown women is like, okay, I know y'all can speak to it in a different way. Like that disconnect between us teaching that younger generation about having those conversations around sex education,
Right.
Yeah.
around their bodies, where so many of us grow up and you ask them, well, who did you have that conversation with?
Right.
Nobody.
Right.
Me and my peers.
Right.
You didn't have it in the house? And then you would learn like the dad or the moms, they never had the conversation either. So like you said about that education piece, that's so major. But I just wanted to see like how prevalent sex education and the importance of it moves in and around this work, you know?
Exactly. And we need to normalize having these conversations with our children in stages of development.
Right.
Because like our children, you know, when you go to the doctor every year for different things, you know, when they get older, you know, they check in different stuff. They asking you developmentally questions like, are they doing this, are they doing that? And especially when they reach that stage of puberty where, you know, children are really curious and interested in why their body is changing. Having those conversations with your children and letting them know and understand that this is normal and it's okay. Let's normalize talking about your private parts and having, you know, clear conversation as to why they need to know this stuff.
Right.
Like it's not, you don't just need to know it for fear that it might get violated. You need to know it so that you understand that you're a growing person.
Right.
You know, you're a child and, you know, don't be afraid to get to that point. You know, of course we got some, you know, children that are like going hard and, you know, way past that point and shouldn't be where they're at. But, you know, that's another story. But I'm just, you know,
I can speak to that.
Yeah, I'm just, you know, because we are so conscious, and I think we project our fears onto our children, and, you know, we kind of hold back from having certain conversations and talking about different things for fear of the takeoff. You know what I mean? But I feel like, you know,
it's just a thing where our nation in particular is too over sexualized for sex education not to be important
over sexualized
and not to be pushed just as hard as the over sexualizing factors. You know what I'm saying? So when you said like in school, it's like, no, as much as we have this in movies and music, it has its own industry called porn that has your brain all over the place and feeds into the over-sexualizing and feeds into, even though, you know, I know people, it is a controlled thing, but that you being knocked off kilter comes from the over-sexualized, the fact that you can make that into the controlled thing. Where did you get that from? Where did you get that? Because otherwise it would just be like, we would just be talking about abusing somebody for the control, like punching on them, or, you know, why does sex have to come into play as your control thing? You understand what I'm saying? So now, where does that thought process come? Because we're being over sexualized, because we're being shown things and not explained what this is at a very young age, you know? So with that being the case of us being a very over sexualized nation, sex education, as you said, it should be at the 2, 3, 4, and we are intelligent enough to know without diluting the message what's age appropriate. And that's something that we can continuously talk about too. You know what I'm saying? Based on, again, the images that our children and us, we're taking in, and the things that we're showing on purpose and inadvertently, and we don't even know at times, because children, like we always say, extremely impressionable. They're watching everything. They're watching everything. So because of that, it's like every other education, it's an ongoing education. And then, like you said about milestones and developments, because of that, with a person, a young person, we need to be adjusting the information as we go. You know what I'm saying? So,
and that's the key right there. That is the key. Like, you can't, like, developmentally, when you are having these conversations with your children and, you know, they're growing, you gotta meet them where they're at. You know, when they're little, it's the, you know, and me personally, I have 4 girls. So my older girls, I was that parent that was giving nicknames to private parts, right? And as I got older and my children got older, I understood the importance of not doing that. So I didn't do that with my younger girls. You know, it was more direct, you know. So I feel like even as they get older, you got to level up the conversation for their level of maturity. Like, when you're a child, you're talking in a different way. And, when you're 10 and then when you're 15, you kind of have
And even
to,
when you 21,
even when you're
you know what
21,
I'm saying?
you kind of, I mean,
21.
21 ain't trying to hear it. At that point, they like, look, mom, don't.
But we're gonna have to figure this out because
Yeah,
your
like,
frontal lobe, I know I've been on that all day, but it's
listen,
a real thing. Like the
yeah,
fact
but
that, the fact your brain really is truly not
yeah,
developed
but
until 25.
the
That
way
changes everything for
society
me,
is
yo.
set up for the and not only that, our body, our biological, not just the frontal lobe, like physiologically,
Yes.
we're like we're in our heads, and we're dealing with, like, it's like me versus me. Like, who am I? When you going through that adolescent stage, and you trying to find your place in the world and in your family and individually with yourself, it's like, oh my gosh. And it's so easy to get turned towards sex. Like, it's so easy to be drawn by it, and that's why it's so dangerous for at-risk youth, like, adolescents, because it's easy for them to feel that connection, and try to connect with something outside of the home. Go start to build their own thing with their own families, with friends and even family members. But it's so easy for them to be drawn to it,
Right.
because of what is happening internally
And around them, crazy. So I don't want to be owing too much money. Is around.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It
We
is
are
that
past
time.
the time, but
So,
this was
but-
I'm sorry. This is
I appreciate
well worth it. Sorry we kept you past
okay.
6:00. If you could, repeat your name again, where you are, the brick and mortar, the crisis line, so that people can hear it
Social
again.
medias, all that, all the good
Yes.
Yeah,
stuff. Emails, the whole nine.
Yeah,
Yes.
we are on Instagram and Facebook. And then our hotline again is 215-985-3333. And my name is Amber Goltz, and my email is amber, AMBER, WOAR.org. And our office location is 1617 JFK on the 8th floor.
Thank
And
you.
they are hiring
Yes.
crisis advocates,
Human trafficking advocate.
human trafficking advocates,
And they welcome
And
lived
education.
experience.
and
Yes.
education. If you are somebody who's able to train in some of the skill sets and certify some of the skill sets that are needed to work at war. Can you tell people what war means one more time?
Yeah.
I'm
so,
sure you did it earlier.
Yeah,
but-
originally WAR stood for Women Organized Against Rape, but now it's the Philadelphia Center Against Sexual Violence. We just
Okay.
kept the acronym.
I got you. I really, we appreciate you being on the
Yes,
show.
thank
We
you so
appreciate the
much.
information. Again, they are hiring. We need to have representation in every area, y'all, so that people can be addressed and dealt with in a very humane way, because they know, they see, they recognize. So we need to be in every space. So I'm very big on that, and I'm very big on people just being able to have an entry into taking care of themselves, being self-sustained,
And
you
their
know,
community.
and their community. So this is PSA.
Philly
Philly
Service
Service
announcement.
announcement. Takeover Tuesday, Takeover Love, Support, Grace, Social Activism, Resources,
And
and
art.
Art. I'm the assist. That's the queen, Nick Raw Can, my right hand
Hey, y'all.
sister. We appreciate y'all. We appreciate you for coming on the show. That's what we do.